Welcome back, or welcome to the podcast between myself, Gunnar Regan, and my co-host, Andrew Swasey. Andrew, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm in San Diego. It's a beautiful day out, about 80 degrees. Nice dry temperature. Gonna go to the beach after our podcast. How about yourself? How's your weekend?
Oh man, I am realizing I live a wonderful life because I've chosen it. And what's going to carry over into our conversation today is humility, which that first statement of mine may not have sounded very humble. Um, However, the second and maybe more nuanced topic we're going to get into today is delayed gratification. And I imagine we're going to pull out some amazing flowers to show some people both in humility and delayed gratification. So with that in mind, if you've been listening to this podcast to this point, we love to talk about these different overarching topics that we want to share with people because they make a difference in our lives. And we imagine they're going to make a difference in your life as well. So today, our first topic is humility. And it would be wrong if we just deferred to a dictionary for a definition on what it means to experience humility or be humble. So Andrew, can you tell me what it means for you to have humility or to be humble?
So humility to me, when I thought about it and wrote it down, is recognizing the outer limits of one's ability to do something. These outer limits are established through experience and awareness. So that was how I distilled it down into my own thoughts around humility. I'm curious, kind of, where did you take your own definition, or what does humility mean to you?
First off, I love it. I love yours. That's great. It's going to be different than mine. So my definition of humility is a unique and gracious approach to other people and the self, being myself, especially in moments of challenge or adversity. And where that comes from is we can be really, really good at something. And if we just flaunt that around all the time, it can take away from others' experiences. So having a gracious approach and a unique approach to every situation we go into, I believe is essential to being human, right? If we're going to the root words here, like human, humility, humble, right? They all start the same way. They all have a similar essence. So being gracious to others, but especially being gracious to ourselves is where humility really kicks off for me. I'm curious what you think on that. And maybe do you have any experiences where humility was lacking in your life?
Yeah. No, I really like your definition there. It encompasses other people in the definition of humility. I like the word graciousness as well. That to me implies compassion, and there's no better person to apply graciousness and compassion to than yourself, because if you can do that for yourself, then you can easily do that for other people. With humility, and also kind of coming back to what you're saying, and what I heard is a lot of it, and I imagine both of our definitions of it, they refer back to the ego and where someone's like humbleness is like stemming from. And when you can sniff out people who lack humility because there is an air of arrogance around them. They're almost like, I'm like better than you, right? Well, and a lot of times I notice when people are lacking humility, it comes from some form of an insecurity about themselves, or they're inadequate in some way or form. At least they believe they are. And so they're having the posture to make up for that. And the cool thing about humility is when you come across people who genuinely exhibit humility, is that there's like a feeling and a sensation around it. And a lot of times it stems from confidence, not insecurity, right? Negation, acknowledge there. Because people are confident about what they've done. They've, the expression you and I both use, that they've put in the work. They've had that experience, and no one can take that from them. And when you have those experiences and you've known the struggles to get to where you're at, you're like, this was from a lot of like sweat and toil here. Wasn't like I just showed up here and all of a sudden this happened. Like, this was intentional, and this was effortful, right? And I imagine, and I noticed both of our definitions, to me they encompass that, right? Where it's kind of like a badge of honor, more so than it is like trying to signal to other people that you're something, right? And I would say that would be the antithesis of humility, in a way, because you're really more concerned about what other people think rather than the work that you've done. So coming back to like my definition of humility and how I came up with it, I'll repeat it again. It's recognizing the outer limits of one's ability to do something, and these outer limits are established through experience and awareness. When humility is developed over time, at least that's the way that I look at it. Well, let's talk about like for you, for example, CrossFit, or for me, surfing. I practice a level of humility around surfing sometimes, and I say this jokingly in a self-deprecating way, but I say I suck at surfing still. But I don't mean that because I don't literally suck at surfing. Sometimes I say that because of the challenge of the task itself and all the work that goes into it. I've been doing it for 3 or 4 years, and I know there's people out there who are way further along than I am, and they're way better than I am. And that's okay, because they've put in the work, they've put in the effort to get to where they're at, and that's admirable, in my opinion. Whereas, like, for me, I understand that surfing, people who learn how to surf, if you've done it for 1 year, you're still pretty okay. And it takes a lot of time, a lot of practice. And when I go out there, I see, even though I'm improving and I'm getting better, my humility is pretty significant, because I know how much work it takes to get to that next level. And I imagine with you in CrossFit, you can recognize the same thing, for the levels that you want to get to, and those top competitors, the CrossFit champions of the world, they've put in the work, right? And they've put in the time to get to where they're at. And I guarantee you they have a ton of humility around the fact that they're as successful as they are, because they know how hard it was to get there, and they can admire someone like yourself who's on that journey and in the process right now to get to that point. So for me, when I think about humility in that sense, it's like, all right, where are you currently at? Let's say it's a skill like CrossFit or surfing, right? And this is that threshold, right? And this is where you're at. You have the awareness, you have the experience to realize that this level right here is where you're at, right? Other people are up here, right? But because they've done the work, they've put in the effort and the time, and that, okay, if I want to eventually get up to here, it's going to take pushing that threshold, and it's slowly going to raise, and that bar is going to get higher and higher. And over time, after you put in the work, you will eventually get there, barring something traumatic, right? Anyways, that's irrelevant. And so when you have that awareness of where you're honestly at, and it takes being honest with yourself, you can realistically set your expectations, realistically set a plan to continue to progress and push forward. Although when you're unrealistic with yourself, and maybe there's like, for whatever reason, like we talked about earlier, you're not practicing humility, maybe think you're a lot better than you actually are, or you're not giving yourself enough credit and you think you're worse than you actually are, you're doing yourself a disservice, because if that thing that you're trying to work toward is really important to you, you owe it to yourself to be honest about where you're actually at and how you can strategically get to that next level or get to that next point. And that, just like strength training, because that's something we talk a lot, you you want to always push that threshold. And when you push that threshold, you give your body time to recover. It will adapt and it will grow. And that's where humility comes in for me. And I think humility is important, like I kind of touched on earlier, because it gives us an honest representation of where we're at and our capacity to grow. I believe true humility comes from awareness of our capabilities. So I'm curious, like, what are your thoughts on that? Like in the specific example I used around surfing and CrossFit, does that resonate with you?
Definitely does. Yeah, I hear you 100% on all your points there. The one word that you kept coming back to, and maybe you're not even aware that you were using it a lot, was honest and honesty. And that sticks out a lot, right? Can you be honest with yourself? Are you honest with who you are and where you are currently? And just an example that's very top of mind for me is going through an online competition where you do a workout on your own, you submit your score and time, and I'm like, when we're recording this, I'm gonna finish this. You're gonna go to the beach and slackline and enjoy your time, and I'm gonna go into a gym on a Saturday night to do burpees for time. And the reason why I'm doing that is I did this workout earlier this morning and I miscounted. And when I watched the video back, and I was like, do I submit something that's wrong? And for me, like, it would be dishonest to submit something that's not my best right now.
Yeah, you
And
have
knowing that,
your standard for yourself and like your expectations, are very high, and you would be lying to yourself basically if you weren't living up to those expectations. Is that accurate?
for sure. And the humility aspect, I mean, there's the honesty. What we're going off of now is like, all right, I want to be honest with what I put out to the world, that it's my best. And the humility piece is, I screwed up. It's on me. And this is a moment of adversity that I could submit a bad score, and then it's in their control. Where I have the opportunity to be, all right, I did not meet the standard that was set. So I have the time, I'm gonna go do it again. And that's right there. That's the moment of challenge. Like, do I want this challenge? And yeah, the answer is yes. I want to be better for me. And that has internal impacts. Like, I'm going to be proud of what I put out when I do it right. And in my number of laps around the sun, I've recognized when I show up as my best self, my honest, humble self, it's really easy for other people to get behind you and what you're doing. And that energy that you gain from shared experiences and shared drives, whatever is shared between other people, more energy gets put in that direction. Right. So for me, it's like, I want to show up and give the example that you do things the right way. You do them to a very, very high standard in competition and in daily training.
Yeah.
Because then that's how I live, and it carries over. I'm sure for you, being out on the ocean is unforgiving. And for you to jokingly say, I suck at surfing, I mean, we could just translate that to, I'm willing to get my butt kicked by the ocean until I figure this out.
Yeah.
And this is a beautiful segue to delayed gratification, our other topic today, of you're willing to go out and toil, essentially, right? Until you're like, oh, that was it. And now I can replicate what just happened because it was good. And I know it felt good, and it most likely appeared good to other people watching. They're like, yeah, that's how you do it. And then you can improve from there. And for me, please jump in at any time, but for me in training so many different movements and time domains and uh, types of conditioning by myself, like I'm the only one that knows if I did it or not.
Mhm.
Because when it comes to that moment of, all right, now I'm going to be testing and I'm choosing to test myself, whether that's a world stage, whether that's a local stage, all of the work I'm putting in now goes into, all right, the potential is so much greater when I focus on my work right now. That delayed gratification can be, it can literally, with your words, become what you want. And I want to throw this to you. What is the definition of delayed gratification?
I was just about to ask you,
Yeah.
but I'll start. So before I get into delayed gratification, I actually wanted to even like step back a little bit further from there, just kind of generally define gratification. This to me is not an overly unique definition. I think this is overall generally encompassing for most people and how they would interpret gratification. But I look at it as it's the satisfaction someone gets when they seek out a specific desire. You and I could substitute desire for goal as well, or whatever objective we want, right? And so delayed gratification, like what does delayed gratification mean to me? And like why is it important? Like, sorry, let me take a step back. Like what does delayed gratification mean to me? But then in antithesis of that, I also want to define what is instant gratification, because I have some thoughts. And I think just in general speaking, gratification in general is important, whether it's delayed or it's immediate. Coming back to us as human beings, when we gratify ourselves, it allows us to feel a certain way, right? It helps us get what we want. It's like a reward system that's naturally built into us. If we were to think back to like hunter-gatherer times, right? Like the fact that we could have desires and like seek out the things that we need to survive, like those, if they weren't gratifying, would we like seek them out? And that's like a whole nother conversation. I won't dive into that rabbit hole.
Yeah, I don't know if we need to get into like hormone responses and like why we do certain things, but yeah,
Yeah, and
what is
that was
gratification?
what part is what I want to get at. You know, like we have the dopamine response and all that kind of stuff. It feels good. So like gratification is to me, it's like a lot of times because we use the term delayed gratification and immediate gratification, we kind of put them into boxes where we say one is good or bad. I've chosen to disassociate good or bad from delayed or immediate gratification, just kind of look at them in isolation from each other. So like delayed gratification is important because as we evolved from quote unquote hunter gatherers, we weren't living on a day-to-day basis, right? We didn't have to immediately satisfy our needs to survive. We created a level of stability in how we lived, and that allowed us to expend energy into other endeavors and other activities. And over time, though, that's kind of what has allowed us to civilization to get to this point in the future where we are no longer just focusing on survival and or replication and things like that. So our the way we live our life is no longer so immediate, and we can think about delaying things so we can have a future that's better for ourselves. And that's where I come back to the definition of delayed gratification. It's when we something that's more important to us that's in the future than what is currently in front of us right now in the present. And I think the most obvious example of that is like investing for retirement, right? A lot of times people choose to use their money whatever they want, up to them. But taking investing for retirement, that takes forethought, that takes delaying gratification, choosing what you could use this money for now for what you could use it for in the future. So the ability to delay gratification, I think, is uniquely human. And I think it's an important thing because it allows us to really achieve things that are bigger than us, because big things don't happen overnight. They take time. it's a process that goes for it. But whereas, like immediate gratification, coming back to the example I was saying before, like if you're out in like the wilderness and you're starving and you come across a berry bush, you need immediate gratification to eat the food and nourish your body with calories and nutrients, right? So like that being a fairly obvious example. So I just wanted to create that distinction between the two and really reiterate the fact that delayed gratification is a practice in wanting something better for our future self. It comes at an opportunity cost of sacrificing what we could have right now for what we could have in the future. And that is an important clarification for me when it comes to the idea of delayed gratification versus immediate gratification. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I really like it. And you do a nice job of painting the picture. All right, we can get something right now. Yes. However, we can also create space in understanding, are we getting this thing right now to make the future me greater? Or is this immediate decision going to, will it carry any weight into the future, right? That delay in gratification is really projecting what we want our future to look like. Yeah. And I like what you touch on there of there's no good and there's no bad. There just is gratification. And we should respect that in the sense of everyone is going through something. And as an observer to someone else and what someone else does, if I'm judgmental, I'm giving myself that immediate gratification that, oh, I'm better than them, right? And that comes back to lacking humility and understanding I don't know what anyone else is going through.
Yeah.
I can ask. Let me rephrase that. You should ask. And when you ask someone else what they're going through and how they're doing, it creates relationships so quickly and so meaningful that may be in itself delayed gratification. You don't know what can come from creating a new relationship.
You're delaying the urge to make assumptions about other people and how they think. And you're delaying that by asking questions, being inquisitive, and trying to understand their position on whatever the thing may be. And I lost my train of thought, but
it's all good.
Actually about what you're saying?
Yeah, I would like to give the definition that I wrote down before we started talking. So delayed gratification to me is using discernment to work on a task, craft, or goal, knowing the outcome will justify the effort and focus.
I like that.
I like that too.
A lot.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, like delayed gratification is part of the goal setting process. And you said this a couple of times. You were talking about awareness, being aware of your decisions can allow for the delay or whatever you're putting into the future to be greater. I see that in so many different things throughout my day of, we can go as simple as, all right, I wake up, I'm the last one out of the house, I'm going to make my bed. So when I come home, that 12-hour, whatever delay or time into the future, I'm going to be like, yeah, this feels good. I can build on that feeling of gratification. Like I'm grateful that I did this because it made me feel good.
Yeah.
And I was in a conversation earlier today, and it came to a discussion on what it means for a community to have a nice, kept space to share. And in specific, this was referring to an elementary school, a small elementary school in a city where it had this landscaping and shrubs and trees and stuff that were just overgrown and hadn't been touched in years because many different reasons, whatever it is. But what we in this conversation came to is it's going to feel really good when the community works to make this comfortable and appealing and a place that you can all go to and share in. And if we draw that back, when I make my bed in the morning, I enjoy coming home, going to or getting ready for bed the next night with a made bed. And it took me a while to get to that point where I understood that was a positive thing in my day. And I'm curious, you own a gym. What type of details do you like to have in place that make you feel good in the next time you use them or future moment?
Well, a clean.
I just love throwing you questions that we didn't talk about beforehand.
Well, I mean, the most obvious one is a clean gym, like the floors. Like that's the first thing people notice when they walk in my studio. When you come to San Diego and visit one day, you'll walk into my studio and you'll observe that as the first thing you notice when you walk in. The floor is clean. There's maybe a couple specks here and there if I haven't immediately cleaned it. But that's something that is a practice that I have in keeping the cleanliness of the studio. And it's something that one of my more recent clients who started working with me a couple weeks ago, she was complimenting me on the other day. And she's like, this is actually a big reason why I decided, not big reason, but part of the reason why I decided to come and work with you here is how clean your studio is. And I was like, oh, thank you. Like I put a lot of time and effort into this because it's important to me. I've literally put strategic thought into the equipment and the racks and the things I get in my studio, so it's easier for me to clean. Like if you have a bunch of kettlebells sitting on the floor versus on a rack, you have to lift up every single kettlebell. Dust will collect behind the big ones that barely get used or the little ones. And the next thing you know, you have this dirty gym that's dusty, and it's unappealing when new clients walk in the door. And to me, when I opened up my studio, because I had lived in that literal situation in other people's gyms while training there, I had told myself, like, this is a good example of how my gym will not be negation acknowledged.
Yeah, so it's unappealing, right?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I mean, fortunately, my studio is close to 1,000 square feet. It's fairly reasonable to maintain. And after every client, I clean off the mats, like wipe down anything that got sweated on. I make sure the weights go back to where their racks were. I put things away, and I do that for every session, every client, because I care about how each client walks into the studio. Each time there's like a clean towel on the mat whenever a new client walks into the studio. So when they come down to the ground to get their workout started with some of their exercises, they have a nice clean towel there. There's cups, there's water there. There's all these things that are available for them. And I put thought into that ahead of time. So my clients could have a certain experience coming in. I lost my train of thought and how this related to delayed gratification.
Well, it allows you to, I'll answer it for you. When you have those systems in place,
yeah,
and you expect those systems to be kept, one, you're delaying the gratification when that new person comes in for the first time. They're like, subconsciously or consciously, whatever it is, they go, oh yeah, this is a clean place. Like I feel comfortable here. And that to me, that's a major detail that is missed. And in a way to, I don't want to put blame on anyone, because every situation has its own complications to having a clean gym. But I've been in, like college rec centers, and I've been to massive Globo gyms, and I've been to, 800 square foot garage gyms.
Yeah.
You will get more out of being in a environment that is clean.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because the second your WOD tells you to do 100 burpees, you don't have to look down on the ground and wonder if that ground's dirty. And when I go down and do a burpee, right, it's clean.
100%.
More for you specifically, because I hate burpees and I don't make my clients do anything I don't do myself.
Let's go into that. I do a lot of things that I don't have my clients do. And that could be humility, just being like, you don't need to do this because I know how bad it hurts. Or it could also be, this doesn't really work for me, so I'm gonna let you have a better version of this. So
for sure. Well,
funny.
Hey, Gunnar, on another note, well, not another note, but coming back to some of the questions we had around humility and gratification, I'm curious, like, do you have any stories around delayed gratification, or was there a moment or event that taught you to delay gratification in your life?
Oh man. Well, previous recording, I shared a story about the time I was cut, or I wasn't given the spot to play in a major, state tournament in Minnesota for hockey, which is, a massive deal. It's something I dreamed about forever. But what I gained from that is very much delayed gratification. I learned that I worked hard and I can work harder. I learned what I was doing was putting all of my efforts and energies into trying to be better than someone else rather than into being my best. And my best is different than your best. And that's an important lesson. So that delayed gratification came around, and I refined my system. I trained harder. I trained smarter. I focused on me rather than what others were doing. And that allowed me to win and be a very important impact player the next 2 years, winning 2 more state championships. I was a part of that first team, but I didn't get to play. For the next 2 years, I made sure I was playing.
Yeah.
And as bitter as I was in the first couple of days, weeks, it all came together and understanding, all right, I discerned like the future me is going to be happy when it's my time to shine. And coming into school, like I was in a very challenging high school in terms of academics, and I came from a school that so I transferred to a high school as a freshman, and very different environments. When I first got there, I did not realize how smart some people are, how good people are at school. And the competitive nature in me allowed me to see, if I'm doing my work every single day, those little things, at the end of the year, I'm going to be proud. And that's delaying the gratification. And, you and I have talked a lot about goals and understanding like, all right, I can project this out in the future. This is what I want. That itself is gratifying. To have something to work towards is awesome. I would love to talk to anyone that is unsure of what they want to work towards and create some clarity around that.
Yeah.
A little plug there.
Just coaching. Find them on Instagram.
Yeah, animus coach. Let's go. Um, so it's that willingness to suffer now, and we've talked about that too in the past. Of the suffering is a choice. You can either suffer in the future or you can suffer right now and make things good.
Yeah.
Um,
I think that word suffer, that there could be some threads to pull on that, although I'll leave that for another episode. Um,
yeah.
I'm curious. So, like for you, and what you're saying, it was like humility and delayed gratification. They came from this experience you had in high school on the hockey team. It wasn't like it wasn't like someone in particular taught this to you. It was something that you learned through experience.
Uh, yeah. You're phrasing that well. It came through the experience of losing something that I valued. And that was the opportunity to play.
Yeah.
Not having that opportunity is what made me work harder and put more effort and focus into it, because I found out that I did want it. And I want to be gracious here, because I realize not everyone thinks the way I think. Coming back to my definition of humility is like having grace for other people and myself. Um, you may be in a tough situation, and this is speaking generality. You may be in a tough situation. You can get through it. It may not be by yourself. It may not be with one other person. You may need a team. You may need to rethink things. And in time, giving yourself that grace to make better decisions for yourself is what allows you to achieve gratification. If we're talking of it in a achievement standpoint, I don't want to go much past that. I think that's where I'm going to stop. But I want to reflect that question to you. Where did you experience delayed gratification in your life?
Well, growing up, I'd say the concept of delayed gratification, at least from like my early childhood throughout high school, was fairly non-existent, to say the least. It was really more so like when I was initially exposed to the concept of delayed gratification, and it wasn't in its explicit form that I became aware of it. But it wasn't until I had certain experiences that I was able to relate to the idea and the concept in a way where it caused me to change my behavior moving forward. I remember vividly having a conversation with my uncle when I was about 18 years old. I just recently graduated high school. I was starting some college courses. I was trying to get a direction for my life, my career. And this was prior to becoming a certified trainer. And my uncle was talking to me about how you could buy real estate and you could buy a house, rent out all the other rooms, live in one of them, and have all your roommates pay your bills. And then if you want to just sit back and chill and hang out and do nothing, you could do that. Right? Although to get to that point, there's obviously many strategies to get there, but the one that he was communicating to me was you just got to save up some money, make a down payment, and just do it, and make it happen. And like that Ford Mustang you drive, that convertible, the V8 engine, like, who cares? Like, sell that thing and get yourself a Honda Civic, something reliable that doesn't cost a lot of money, because at the end of the day, like, are you gonna let he was referring to me in 18-year-old Andrew language that resonated, but you think, if you can be the guy who pulls the girls in the sports car, or you can be the guy who pulls the girl in the Honda Civic because you got the personality or something else, right? So you don't really need the nice car. Like, you can have the personality and the character traits to be that person. And I was like, oh, so he kind of went on from there. And he's like, yeah, like there's all these things that people want to buy with money, and it's like immediately gratifying in that moment. Although it's really not going to progress them towards what they want in the future. And in the context of the community, in the conversation that we had together, we were talking about buying a house. It's like, if you can delay these things, and if you don't have to rely on a car to get a girl, and rather your personality, you can save money and eventually get to the goal where you're going to have a house, you have an asset that is going to pay for itself, and you can live rent free and all these things. And I was like, oh, in my mind, the notion of investing and doing something for future Andrew had never really been communicated to me up to that point in a way that stuck like that one did. And I don't own a house now, so it's very straightforward. That's a completely different story. But that conversation, it resonated with me because I understood that to achieve something worthwhile, sometimes it takes like this quote unquote the sacrifice for the present moment for something better in the future. And I'd say that stayed true with me, although it didn't immediately change my behaviors too much to get to that point where I eventually would have been able to buy a house. Although one of the some of the experiences I've had throughout my 20s have culminated into where I'm at today. And the biggest one that comes to example is having a previous business where I lost all my money, and then learning from that situation and realizing that I was running that business with the desire to gratify the things that I wanted immediately, practicing more immediate gratification, and wasn't operating it in a strategy where I was thinking more long term. And I had to then learn what humility was through that experience, and then start practicing delayed gratification, building up a savings, getting back on my feet, building up a clientele base, getting to this point where then I knew during that whole process, I was like, I'm going to open up a studio, like a gym. This is going to happen, knowing that over the course of those 3.5 years or so, that was going to culminate at that end goal. And there was tough because there were certain sacrifices I made, living with family, choosing to spend money on certain things versus other things. But it was all with that intention of moving towards that goal that I had for myself. And I'm happy to say now I have that studio and that location, but that came with forethought, that came with intention, and it came with my strong desire to have a studio. And I practiced delayed gratification in those moments leading up to that point to get to where I'm at. And so that's like the biggest story that really resonates with me. My uncle exposed me to the idea, although putting delayed gratification and humility into practice didn't come until I had experiences of really, I don't like to use the word failure. I mean, I just like to say lack of success, loss. Yeah. And it wasn't through those periods of struggle that I learned that to get something worthwhile,
totally
process with it. So
yeah, that's the theme there is very similar. Like in my hockey example, I lost, or I perceived it to be a loss of an opportunity, and I wanted it. I really wanted it back.
Yeah.
For you lost money, you lost a lot of things, and it shifted your mindset to be, I really want this. I want to succeed in my own thing. And that's exactly it. Like your uncle taught you what it looks like to invest, knowing that the future is going to be greater. Whether it landed at that moment or not, that theme is really important, right? Like the ability to choose yourself and choose your best self in the future is an investment.
Yeah.
I love the clients that I work with framing what we're doing together, whether that's all physical training, whether that's all mindset, or it's a combination of both, is wherever you are right now is good. I'm glad you're here, because the future that you want is your investment into yourself. How much are you willing to put in, whether that's hard work, whether that's monetary, whether that's having a coach, whether that's going to bed earlier. All of those are investments in your future.
I love what you just said there. If you're listening to this podcast, get a notebook, rewind, and write down what Gunnar just said. That was great. That was gold.
Thank you.
Thank you. For sure. It is. Delaying gratification is an investment in yourself, for sure. I'm curious because our podcast that we do together, at the end of the day, we're here trying to inspire self-responsibility for our listeners. How does humility and delayed gratification relate to self-responsibility for you?
So for me, responsibility and self-responsibility are understanding what we say yes to, and then taking ownership over those things that we say yes to. So I agreed. I said, yes, we're going to meet at this time, and we're going to record this podcast on these topics. And that's how we do it week to week. Because I said yes to it, it's my responsibility. And delaying gratification and humility is I'm saying yes to myself and the things that I want to bring into my life, things that I want to keep in my life. And then also I can say no. I have the human capability to say yes at one point and then also realize it may not work. Whatever that is. Let's say it's you get a job and you work a shift and you get sick over time. You can get out of it. Nothing is permanent, but when we say yes to something, it's our responsibility to take care of it as best as we can. And I would love to pass this message on that the more often you say yes to your health, both mental and physical, the greater the responsibilities you can handle and the greater the gratification will be in the future. I hope you like that one. That was just riffing.
Yeah, that makes me think, for sure. Yeah. Well, humility and delayed gratification and how they relate to self-responsibility for me is that really humility and delayed gratification, no one else is going to do that for you. Like, if you think that humility will just happen, or the ability to delay gratification will just happen without any intention behind it, or that some notion that someone else can do it for you, you're severely mistaken. To accomplish, or not necessarily to accomplish delayed gratification and to have humility, it takes a level of responsibility about yourself. And we talk about self-responsibility and how it relates to awareness. Both of these concepts, they require awareness. We have to be aware of how we're interpreting our abilities and how it relates to humility. We need to practice awareness and delaying gratification so we can have something better for ourselves in the future. And the only person that's going to do that for you and your specific desires is yourself. So these concepts are directly correlated to someone's ability to take responsibility for themselves. And there's no other way around it. You can't just wish these things to happen. You have to take the ownership of these things and apply it into your life in a way that is meaningful for you and helping you achieve your goals, the desires, or the things that you have, the things that you want for yourself. So to me, it's very obvious in how it relates to self-responsibility. I would even say that just practicing humility, practicing delayed gratification is a form of self-responsibility. And yeah, it's really more underneath the umbrella of self-responsibility. and just continuing to take more ownership of yourself so you can have the things that you want in life, whether they're actual things or freedoms, experiences, whatever it is. That's all on you, right? So I see the connection between the two as significant, and they're practices that I'm working on daily, and I'm mindful of as well. So yeah, I think both of these concepts are great for people to meditate on, to think about in your life, what you're working towards. How is humility helping you in your life? How is it delaying gratification? Is basically, how are you working towards the things that you want, toward the person you want to be, the things that you want to have? How are you delaying immediate satisfaction for a better life, in the future? And just, these are great questions to ask yourself, because they are directly connected to your goals and the life that you want to live. And having self-responsibility means taking ownership of the direction of your life. So if you want to have more direction of your life, be mindful of humility, be mindful of the ability to delay gratification and work towards something worthwhile. That would be the main concept that I would summarize these topics with, how they relate to self-responsibility.
For sure. Yeah, well said. Well said. It's important to know where you are right now, just as it's important to know where you want to go. And there's always going to be an opportunity to think in that way and go towards those things. So that's a beautiful way to end this off. Humility is how we approach others and ourselves without judgment. Showing up with curiosity. Delayed gratification is, are you willing to put in work and put in focused thoughts to yourself? Yeah. That's beautiful. Yeah, no, I really like that. This is a great conversation. If you're still listening, I encourage you to close your eyes only if you are seated, not in a car, and take 5 breaths here. Finish this podcast, take 5 breaths, and see yourself in the future. And then play it back to, what are you doing right now that can make that future self that much greater?
Oh, terrific practice there.
Yes. Yeah. And then do that every day the rest of your life.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Was there any other aspects to humility and delayed gratification that you want to touch on, Gunnar?
Yeah, I want to back this up really quick. Just a final note. If you tell yourself you suck at surfing, you may always suck at surfing. If you tell yourself you are out there to improve your surfing, you will improve your surfing. So be mindful of your words, because your words become your reality. And that's all I got. So thank you guys. If you're listening to this point, I hope you continue listening. Reach out to us. This will be our future selves when this gets released. So yeah, if you have anything you'd like to add or thoughts, please share this with other people if you think this is important stuff. So thank you.
I will say, as a caveat to that, I only said that as a joke because of my understanding around language and words. And I realize I am great at surfing. It's a practice. I'm getting better.
Beautiful. Thank you guys. We will catch you next time. I'm Gunnar, co-host here, Andrew. We appreciate you listening, and we hope this helps your day. Thank you. Peace.